This is all about cultivating change. And so, I want to begin with a statement of where we're at. We, and by we, I mean our nation, our institution, our departments, our research groups are at a tipping point with respect to DEI, where opportunity meets needs meets timing. If we reverse 5 years ago, we were not at this particular point. So as a profession, our practices and our policies of the past, they aren't guaranteed to produce a successful tomorrow. And what I mean by that is, we've built on a system that has no guarantees for success for tomorrow because of the people that are in the system. There's going to be a huge demographic change. And as of right now, we're not prepared for that demographic change. In large part, this is just because of the way the system was developed. I think David did a really good job of going through the nature of this systematic development and how it has led to a hierarchy that won't necessarily work moving forward. And so for many of our current practices, policies, and procedures, they've been, they basically marginalized a large swath of individuals. And they've created a climate where our profession and our field is just not the field of choice for many. And when I say the field of choice, I really do mean the field for choice. When I say profession, I'm saying all STEM fields, not just, I'm a chemist, by the way. I'm not just speaking of chemistry, but I'm gonna use chemistry as my stand-in for STEM throughout this whole entire talk. So in a lot of ways, we've had this discussion about pipeline a lot. And, I want to push back from that conversation about pipeline. And so the purpose of this presentation is to provide, more of a quantitative foundation for how we affect change, and also to talk about some solutions and pathways for how we move forward. So in order to do that, we need to have, a common place where we can begin our conversation. And as I said a second ago, often you hear this common conversation about EDI or DEI in terms of a leaky pipeline. I'd like us to reimagine the pipeline, because the pipeline focuses on losses or the failure of individuals to matriculate. A lot of times the pipeline metaphor puts the blame on the individuals. And so we need to pull back and look at this slightly different. So on the right-hand side, we have an image with a ladder, where every rung of the ladder notes an education or professional advancement opportunity. At every stage of this ladder, students or professionals have the opportunity to opt out. That's the nature of our profession, right? People can choose to continue moving forward in our field, or they can walk away and go a different direction. We need to motivate students and professionals to opt in. And we're losing people to better choices. We're just simply not an attractive choice. So we need to make it. We need to make it such that individuals are more apt to persist on STEM tracks. And to do that, we need to make our fields and our professions more attractive. We need to make people want to opt in. So every rung on this ladder represents an opportunity where strategic interventions can be performed to increase the likelihood that people opt into our professions. At Oxide, we believe that faculty can play a critical role with respect to changing the demographics of our fields. As faculty, they're engaged to affect the academic mission at every single stage of this ladder. And as such, the demographics of our professions become a bellwether for inclusivity within our field. So what we have here is a really big table. I'm going to try to parse it down, but the data noted here comes from the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, and it was actually published this April. So this is the most up-to-date data with respect to demographics. So as many of you know, the demographics of individuals that are Black, or individuals that are Latinx, or individuals that are Native American, individuals that are a mixed race are often being combined into one category. As David spoke about before, in the past, that category has been called the URM, and we're trying to move away from that particular title to a label that is a little bit more effective, representative, and correct. David used the term peer. I'm going to use a slightly different term. In this talk, in this particular talk, that combination or category will be noted as underrepresented people of color, or URPOC, because collectively, they are people of color that are underrepresented demographically within our fields. So the table that you see, this aggregates underrepresented people of color and tracks their matriculation to and through college. So the important take home from this data is that underrepresented people of color are entering college with a commensurate representation. As we note here, we can see the 34% of the population they represent and the 36.7% of the individuals who enter college. That being said, even though they're entering college at commensurate representation, they're not actually going through STEM fields at the same level of representation. So once again, I'm using chemistry as my stand-in for all of STEM, but for chemistry, with respect to BS degrees, we're looking at 25.3% of the graduates in 2018 were underrepresented people of color. That's a substantial drop. People are opting out. People are choosing not to move forward in our field. Now, does it stop there? Unfortunately, no. As it turns out, those numbers get actually worse as you talk about matriculation throughout the field. So the data noted above also comes from the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics, and it was also published in April. And this is a table that disaggregates underrepresented people of color and tracks their matriculation through graduate school. It highlights the percentage of individuals earning master's and PhDs. So representation within chemistry dropped from 25% at the bachelor's level to 18.5% at the master's level to 12.9% at the PhD level. Now, this is indicative of lost opportunities to recruit and retain underrepresented people of color. These students are walking away from the field. Why? We all have a pretty good understanding of why. The climates within our respective departments, the way that the system is built is in a way that doesn't make staying within our fields attractive. Now, not only does this trend persist as you matriculate through your educational degrees, it also persists with representation in academia. Oxides actually pulled a whole bunch of data, and we looked at the representation of the demographics inside chemistry departments, and only 5.5% of faculty are underrepresented people of color. 5.5%. So if you're taking a class and you never see or rarely see anyone like you, what's the likelihood that you think that you actually can succeed in that field? How does that affect you emotionally? How does that affect your perception of whether this field is for you? You're fit for the field. Social science papers have continuously said that lack of representation with respect to the cohort of individuals that are teaching students plays a substantial role in the persistence of those students. So here's the thing. We looked at that ladder, and at the core of that ladder, interacting with so many different cohorts are faculty. Faculty represent a point on the ladder in which cultivating change pivots. Though sometimes it doesn't feel like it. Faculty have the capacity, and more importantly, the opportunity to be part of the solution. We can actually affect change in ways that few others can. So with respect to undergraduates, graduate students, and postdocs, we are training the next generation of our respective professions. Now, this is By 2050, our nation will be a majority minority nation. And that means that the penalty for lost opportunities will only continue to increase. So if our demographics don't change, the effect of the intellectual loss, the opportunities will only increase. So here's the truth of the matter. We're just not doing a very good job with respect to demographic representation. But that doesn't mean that we won't get there. That's why we're here today. That's why we're doing all the work we're doing as a community. So as I said earlier, we're at a tipping point where opportunity meets needs, meets timing. And the climate for change on our individual campuses, and more importantly, the level of action on our individual campuses is in a different place than it was 5 years ago. So how do we get there? How do we increase the percentage of underrepresented people of color to opt into STEM? That's the question. Now, David talked about doing a stoppage, having a time frame where everyone focused on climate, on inclusion. I think it's a great idea. But I would argue that in order for us to have effective change, we need to be strategic. It has to be, we have to change the system. Now, you hear people that want to tear down the system and rebuild it. No, that's just inefficient. There are aspects of the system that are wonderful. There are aspects of the system that are horrible. We need to adjust, modulate, change the practices, policies, and procedures that our institutions actually have. We need to be forward thinking in the way that we do this. We need to put ourselves in a position so that the next decision that's made by our institution or our departments have to actually factor in DEI as a function of the decision. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about some actions that we can take, whether it be at the departmental level or at the institutional level to affect change. So the first one is aspire. What I mean by this is that we need to aspire to have our values as a department known and understood by not just reading a diversity statement, but have it understood in a way that our actions correlate to it. Here's what I mean. If you sat down and been part of a team that wrote a diversity statement, and at the end of the day, you posted that diversity statement online, if I can lift up your diversity statement, walk over to another institution, plop that same diversity statement down, and that diversity statement be applicable to that particular institution, how specific were you about your department's values? Yeah, so what I'm asking for is to contextualize in depth so that the department and the students understands exactly what the department actually values, understands the culture that the department is trying to get toward. And in actuality, what we're saying is line up your actions with the target culture that you want to have. And in order to do this, the biggest key is, of course, transparency. Academia is known for not being very transparent, but this is one of the ways that we can affect change, is to be grossly transparent to the point that we've laid out everything that we want to do, how we plan to get there, and what we're trying not to become and what we're trying to become. I'm a biochemist, so oftentimes I find that when I do something that doesn't work, it teaches me as much as when I do something that does work. So we need to note the things that we don't want to be, just like we need to note the things that we want to become. The next one is internally assess. We have to be quantitative in our decision making. Now, we're all STEM individuals, but for some reason, we do not approach DEI as scientists. We approach it emotionally, but we need to pull back from that. We need to make sure that we know what our internal statistics are. What are the demographics of your department, of your institution? What does success look like in your department? Meaning, if you look at the individuals that are matriculating through your degree, is it different based upon their background, based upon their gender, based upon their ability level? What are your internal statistics? You have to know those. And you need to have a climate survey, and not this university climate survey, not a survey that goes to the whole entire campus. This survey needs to be for you, because I know that multiple times I've taken a survey and many of the things in the survey were just not applicable to my department. And this survey, it also needs to be external. It can't come from your university. It has to come external. Because I know for a fact, for me, if my employer gives me a climate survey, I'm probably not going to be truthful with it. I'm going to bubble right down the middle, because it is so easy to pull back and look at the demographics and find out who I am based upon the climate survey, based upon what I filled out. How many people are been at the school for 3 years that are a Black male that, so when you start to actually pull back, so many identifiers exist. So because of that, you need to make sure your climate survey is external. Top-down leadership. So what I mean by this particular statement is that oftentimes it is the underrepresented people of color and females within the department that end up doing most of the work with respect to EDI. It has to be something that is broader than that. If you have a diversity committee that doesn't have a white male on your diversity committee, then you don't actually have a diversity committee. Think about that. How many times have you been on a diversity committee where there wasn't a single white male? We have to be honest with it. We have to understand that everyone needs to have a seat at the table. And most importantly, leadership has to have a seat at the table in a way that they own the outcome. There has to be someone who is held accountable for affecting change within the department. Because if no one is held accountable for affecting change, for demographic change, for culture change, for climate change, then there's no penalty for it failing. And that's why it has to be someone in leadership within inside the department that actually has to take ownership of it. The next one is effective assessment. So many people on this conversation are familiar with assessment, but when it comes to EDI, we don't do a great job of doing assessment. I have no idea why, but we have to start. So previously we talked about the climate survey. So based upon the climate survey, your department or institution may now decide to do add some sort of instrument to your department, may decide to have some sort of program. Well, use the climate survey that you initially had as a foundation. Note the acts that are being done as a function of this instrument, and then analyze the instrument, assess the instrument, and determine based upon data whether it was actually successful. Your next climate survey will give you quantitative information about whether you moved in the right direction. And if you have, awesome. If you haven't moved as much, adjust and do it over again. Because there's no silver bullet. There's no one correct right answer. It's going to take, every single institution is going to have to do this slightly different. And because every single institution is going to have to do this slightly different, there's no true rule book for how to be successful. And the last one I have here is to link to meritocratic culture. Make diversity inclusion and part of the merit process. Make it part of the process of hiring, tenure, and promotion. And if you have a tenure, tenure promotion documents that don't address diversity in an effective way, then right there on paper, on procedures, on practices, you're essentially stating that it doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter in your professional advancement, then does it really matter to your department? It has to be part of your department. I would say that it has to be part of your institution, but as we know, institutional changes are even more difficult. But if we don't have it as part of the foundational aspects of what success looks like, then all of this is going to blow away. All of our efforts are going to be spinning wheels. So with that, I'm going to bring it to a conclusion. And so I talked about Oxide a little bit, but at Oxide, we believe that in order to move the needle, it requires us to have a professorate whose demographics correlate to the demographics of our nation, which means we need to get underrepresented people of color to opt in to staying with STEM. We need to change our culture in a way that we can make our field a field that is one that people want to be part of, right? So the other aspect of this is that the numbers demonstrate that we need systemic change with respect to climate and representation at every level of the academic education and research. You saw the drop off, right? That means that actions need to be taken that are strategic at every single one of those steps on the ladder. If we don't take those steps, we can't affect change. So in Oxide, we believe that this requires intentional change, changes to policies and procedures that are designed to not just inform and motivate, but to educate and to create policies that are lasting and functional. So at every level, leadership needs to take action to improve DEI. We have to pull back from making this an effort of just the underrepresented people of color and make it an effort of the leadership so that the entire department can interact in a way that produces the outcome that we need. Look, when it comes to it, I love to be able to say that we can change hearts and minds with respect to EDI. But I'm honest. I'm honest with it. I don't believe that we can. But can we fix the system such that it becomes more difficult, that you have to actually push against the system if you want to have a poor climate, if you don't want to be inclusive, right? We can. We can affect the system so that it leans toward the right side and not toward the side of the past. So in conclusion, I'd like to, or for the acknowledgements, I'd like to thank the Sloan Foundation. The Sloan Foundation has seen the value of Oxide's disciplinary-based approach to DEI. And because of that, they've helped us out a lot, and I really do appreciate that. The Oxide board has been a great resource for helping us move in the correct direction. And my colleague, Professor Rigoberto Hernandez, who's actually the director of Oxide, he's been a great partner as we've worked together, Johns Hopkins, and also UCSD and Johns Hopkins for deciding that they wanted to house Oxide at their respective campuses. And there's also several departments who partnered with us, and we appreciate that as always. Thank you for your time. At this time, if anyone has any questions whatsoever, I am all ears.
Dr. Stallings, Sorry.
want to say that I appreciate your focus on opt-in, because I think that a lot of focus is on like, how do we stop people from dropping out, right? And so like asking us to think more creatively about how to get people to say yes and really want to be with us, I think was really insightful for me. So thanks for that.
Thank you so much. It's, from my perspective, it's a lot easier to talk about and to think about what we can do versus what we can't do. We can't fix a K through 12 system, right? We can't change the social economic system, but what we can do is we can fix this. We can, as I always say, I can always make my chocolate cake taste better, right? I can't do anything about my gumbo because I can't cook it. Oh, I apologize. There's questions in the chat. So I mentioned the importance of a climate survey. Yeah, so Sea Change absolutely does a climate survey. Oxide also does department-specific climate surveys for STEM. I would say that, those are the two organizations I know that are doing department-specific climate surveys. A lot of places are actually doing institutional climate surveys, which, they just aren't as effective as being able to look specifically at your particular department. One of the things that both Sea Change and Oxide does is they ask you questions about where you feel you're struggling. And they design peer-reviewed questions that are specific for that particular area. And because of that, they have better surveys.
Dontarie, I just wanted to check in on the survey, the climate survey. Are you also suggesting, is that survey just of faculty, or is that also of students, of staff, everyone in the department? Because it seems to me like the chemistry departments, especially, that I've noticed, there can be a lot of variety.
Yes. So I would say I can't speak to what Sea Change does. I know what Oxide does. So what we do is we developed a survey that's for faculty, staff, graduate students, PhDs. When I say and we allow the department to determine which category you want to put individuals in. We don't make up that, because every single department looks at their research scientists differently. The reason why all of these groups are actually surveyed is because, if your staff is unhappy, that says a lot about your department. Right? And so not addressing that means that the climate within your department isn't effective. Because I remember my time as a graduate student, I interacted with staff and research scientists way more than I interacted with my PI, right? And so, individuals that are integral to the success of your department need to be surveyed. Okay, so there's a question about disability equity. So this is hard, but it's easier today than it was 2 years ago. I think with the way that the world has stopped and the way that we've adjusted the way that we do research, the way that we teach, we're in a better position now to actually address a lot of a lot of issues when it comes to disability, right? And we also note, and we're able to see a lot of ways that our community has failed students, faculty members, our colleagues with respect to with hidden disabilities. We've seen the abject, failure of substantial number of our students who weren't supported in a way because our system never actually did support them, and we didn't realize it. And because of that, I think that we now have a voice where we can actually affect change. I think the conversation that we always go to is, I remember doing assays, colorimetric assays inside a chemistry lab, and we did color indicators. And well, if what you're doing and the way you set something up is only going to work for 75% of your class, then you've set something up poorly. And I think that we're seeing those flags now more so, which means that we have a little bit more maneuverability to actually affect change. Pamela, I agree with you. So yeah, I'm at UCSD, and one of the arguments that I have is we have this board of great data. So you can go and look at the demographics of our university anytime that you want. But for some reason, you can't see the problems. we have so much great data, but don't try to mine the data. Don't pull the curtain back. Yeah, I think that in a lot of ways, institutions are afraid of looking bad. But instead of having that fear, we need to endorse the conversation of none of us are winning here. There's not an institution in our nation with respect to STEM that is doing this effectively. The magnitude of your failure doesn't matter right now. What matters is the magnitude of the change that you plan to do to be better tomorrow. So, they're operating from this fear standpoint because they don't want anyone to see their cards.
Yeah, I would go a little further than that, because at least my experience, I'm at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And there's also even a worse angle to it, where the institutional data people look at the data from your department and come down and basically blame your department for doing a bad job without giving any resources or assistance or tools to help move the needle. In other words, it's all your fault, department.
Yes.
And then, that's problematic from a departmental perspective. And I've been chair of the department for the last 4 years, and it's been an interesting experience to observe that and to try to answer the question, well, okay, we want to do something. How are you going to partner with us and assist us in this process? Do you have thoughts about that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll begin with the professorate aspect of it. So one of the things, as we're recruiting our next generation of faculty members, I'll pause for a second. Oxide's data showed that if every single female PhD scientist for the last 6 years were to move into chemistry, we still not hit representation that was actually real, right? So this is not a number where you're going to move this quickly, right? So this is a long game. And so if we're playing a long game, we need to do this in a way that is extremely proactive. So always have a line for a target of opportunity that is prepared. So in chemistry, we try to hire among different directions, inorganic chemists or polymer chemists and things of that issue. But what happens if this amazing biophysical chemist shows up, but you don't have a line for that chemist? Well, then you should have a target of interest line always prepared to go after someone who is an opportunity that you cannot pass up. And that should be something that is always set with inside the dean's office that allows you to act in a way that's quick and effective, because these individuals are going really fast. Because as we said before, we're not attractive to them. So if they decided to stay inside academia, then everybody wants them. How can you position yourself to effectively make that individual want to work for you faster than anybody else? A great example would be Lisa Jones. Lisa Jones, who is in the market right now, she's a biophysical chemist. She just turned down UNC, gave her a great startup package, but the ethics of the university don't correlate to who she is as an individual, right? So every single department in this nation should have been looking at Lisa Jones saying, how do we get her? Do we have a line set up right now to pull her into the department? Because when it comes down to it, she's a generational type scientist. She's really that good. Like, her science is impeccable. So why don't you have a line ready? Right? So that's one thing. The other aspect, Judith, that I think is really important is stating exactly what your metrics are, what you want your metrics to be, and having a systematic setup within your department where someone is responsible for doing this. Now, I'm not saying the chair, because that's not a fair statement, but having a group of individuals whose goal with release time is to change the demographics of your department. If you're having a graduate recruitment and your graduate recruitment isn't getting 36%, right? At the end of the day, isn't getting 36% UR POCs as an incoming class, something has failed, right? So have somebody who's responsible for making that happen and give them a release in time to do this, because the level of recruitment to actually do this effectively is substantial. Because I can tell you, because if you're at Wisconsin-Madison, the students that you're looking for, the same students that we're looking for, is the same students that Caltech are looking for, and Caltech's going to get them. and I'm not saying that because I think Caltech is that much of a better place. I'm saying that when kids look at rankings, the rankings mean more than showing up to the school and filling the opportunities that you have at the school, right? So if we're all looking at the same students who've decided to opt in, the competition is real. So that means that you may have to mine deeper to find students that opted out, to find the students who decided that they didn't want to come to join a graduate program because it wasn't for them. They went into industry. And industry is doing so much better than us because industry has been doing this for years. I mean, we all know these numbers aren't brand new, but we've done nothing about it. And so, we're in a race. There's an old quote that I always spill out to my students. The person that is behind will be forever behind unless they choose to move faster than those ahead of them. Right now, we are behind industry. We need to move faster than them.
I was just thinking about the comment just now about departments who are giving offers to underrepresented POC, and thinking that it's something that we've seen work. We're having a series at ASCN about, hiring diverse faculty members or having a diverse faculty search. And something that's been working is having like equity groups. So not just, oh, we're grabbing one, because if you already have a white department, it doesn't necessarily look like it's probably going to be, inviting. It might not be a support structure across campus, things like that. So something that has been working for departments is having, multiple hires at a time to make sure that you're not just setting them up to fail and, showing that you really are putting up a lot of resources. So just a comment. I don't know what the research is on that, but that's what I'm hearing from faculty.
Rachel, the research on that's really good. The cluster hires, Brown did a lot of this. Brown pioneered this in ways that were spectacular. The issue that they had is after they did the cluster hiring, the individuals had a choice whether to stay at Brown or not, and they got poached from Brown. But that's a whole nother conversation. But no, the clustering hiring on campuses are very important. But I would also say this, because we're doing cluster hirings too, where we're hiring, I think, 15 faculty members throughout all the STEM, that we're trying to create a community. The statement of being able to say, look, we know where we're at, but if you come here, you're going to make this place better because you're going to make it easier for us to get another person, right? We have to be authentic and honest with the situation. When I was at Georgia Tech and we were looking at the number of female faculty members, and they were coming in and interviewing, saying the facilities are great, I love this, and then choosing somebody else, we'd always go back and we say, why did you choose somebody else? And they say, I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to, being a pioneer sounds great on a sheet of paper until you're a pioneer, right? They say, I remember when we were kids and we were like, yeah, I would love to live in interesting times. I don't think any of us want to live in interesting times anymore. I think we're good with that, right? So being able to say that your hire is the first of many hires, and not just say, here are the lines. I'm showing you right now that we have 3 lines that are set up to pull more individuals in. So you are systematically saying that we've already put money toward this. We're guaranteeing that this is going to happen. We don't know the time frame, but we have the infrastructure built, because you can't disprove a negative, right? You can't, and because of that, you have to prepare yourself to be able to move in an effective direction. But it has to be systematic, and it has to be in a way that is so incredibly transparent that when you're looking at the next Lisa Jones, that you can actually convince Lisa Jones that your place is the place to go.